This webinar was organized to provide companies with insights into how EAPs can assist them in supporting their teams deal with many new challenges brought into our lives by COVID-19 and remote working. There are many of us grappling with our new work from home environment. Many of us are experiencing feelings of isolation, feelings of loss and detachment. This has led to the inability to focus, increased anxiety and mental health challenges. In addition to these challenges, loss of loved ones, relationship difficulties, increased financial strain is leaving a number of employees feeling stressed and reaching burnout. Hopefully, following this discussion with Nadine from Kaelo, we would have provided you with an empowering solution that can assist both you and your employees overcome these challenges together. To gauge how you, the audience, is feeling today, we will be running a quick and short poll. May you please just answer the 3 questions for us, and then we'll just share the results with you afterwards. Based on the poll results, it is clear that the webinar was scheduled at the right time. The poll results indicate that most employees and HR people are stressed, and they think that the majority of people in the organization are also feeling stressed, and they also feel that they do not have adequate psychological and social support for themselves and their colleagues. With this said, I am going to hand over to Nadine, who will provide us with an overview of what makes up an EAP, the value it introduces into the working environment, and the return on investment that companies will be able to harness. May I also advise you as well that there is a Q&A button that you can use to post your questions. Nadine, as a Chief Strategy Officer, she strives to uphold the Kaelo brand as representing the best in accessible health insurance and lifestyle medicine. Nadine has the privilege of working with South African stakeholders within the healthcare value chain to deliver high quality and accessible healthcare solutions for South African citizens. Over to you, Nadine.
Thank you, Zanele. It's always really strange to present to a group of people that you can't see, but I'm going to have no doubt that I'm presenting to beautiful faces and beautiful people today. So thank you for your time and thank you for signing into the webinar. And I'm glad that this topic on EAPs and organization has piqued your interest. And I look forward to just giving you an overview over the next 15 to 20 minutes, and then please, by all means, post your questions. What I can't answer, I'll certainly be able to get answers on in terms of some of the clinical stuff, but certainly I think I'll be able to give you a give overview of how EAPs work in organizations, what we're seeing in terms of the pandemic. I think what I'd really like to do in the onset is give you some insight in terms of what the Kaelo Lifestyle Program is experiencing in terms of the members that we support. So if you'll just give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen with you. And then we're going to get into just a bit of presentation, and then we can have an interactive discussion. I hope everybody's hearing me okay. I hope you're seeing the screen okay. Zanele, if you can give me a thumbs up so we know we're all on the right path. So in essence, Kaelo is a health insurer, a healthcare organization, and one of the avenues, one of the arms of our business is we run an EAP program. It's called Ask Nelson. We call it a lifestyle program. It's been called internationally. It's starting to get the label of psychosocial medicine, and I think why we've evolved from EAP into lifestyle programs because we've just seen the vast use of the service through not only an organization's employees, but also their family members. So a really good psychosocial program in the workplace will always extend the services to employees' family members. And we're not really strict around who we do and don't counsel in terms of if they reference an employee's name, because our belief is if people close to the people working within an organization who are paying for the counseling services, if they're not well, then the employee is not okay and they're not productive at work. So any good psychosocial program should extend to, at the very least, those that live within the home of the employees. So it's a lifestyle program, and it addresses a lot of different areas, which I'll go through with you a little later in the presentation. So what is the experience that Kaelo has had? And when I'm speaking about the change in experience, I'm speaking since the pandemic, so since April 2020, we've really seen some changes, of course, just in terms of the impact of COVID-19 and the impact of the pandemic. We've seen what is being referenced as not only a physiological pandemic, but a psychosocial pandemic. So there's a lot more light and focus on the issue on psychosocial issues. So when I speak to psychosocial, I'm speaking to psychological as well as the social impact on what the pandemic has had on our population internationally and nationally, of course. So we've had three main changes in experience on the Ask Nelson lifestyle program at Kaelo in terms of our counseling services. Certainly with the focus on the issues and the focus on the need for counseling, we've seen our volumes increase exponentially. So where we used to really have to promote a EAP or a lifestyle program in organizations, that's no longer the case. We have organizations really understanding that this is integral to good business. And once we roll it out at an organization, we're getting really good utilization of the services. So Kaelo has always had to really market and promote the EAP services as something positive. That has subsequently changed. And now we have huge amounts of traffic and volume coming into the service center, coming into our counseling programs without really having to go in and promote the services. The one thing we still have to do, and you'll see the little logo in the top right-hand corner of the slide, the one thing you do have to do well when you are rolling out a really effective employee support program is you have to always assure employees of its confidential nature. So there is always this little bit of skepticism because the service is offered to us for free to the employee, although we know the employer is paying for it, that are they doing this to have access to my most personal information to use against me in the event that I'm not performing, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a little bit of promotion that still needs to happen around ensuring the confidential nature of the program, but no longer is there having to sell the need for a counseling line or a psychosocial support program. The volumes are just now exponential. And unfortunately, and quite worryingly, the severity of the cases has increased. So any good EAP or any good lifestyle program will always plot the person's presenting issue on a scale. And this is to be able to show the organization for every problem that, not that we go into individual reporting on it, but for all the problems that came into, or the presenting problems that came into the counseling service, how would those have impacted abnormal absenteeism going forward? And how has being part of the program and addressing those issues saved the organization a risk-rated saving in terms of not that abnormal absenteeism not coming to the fore? So any good lifestyle program or EAP program should be able to show an organization. So when you're having to sit in front of a CFO and show the spend on a counseling program, what you should be able to show through reporting and through example is that for every rand spent, there is quite a few rands that come in return in terms of saving on abnormal absenteeism, presenteeism, staff retention, reduction in staff turnover, et cetera, et cetera. And it's up to us as the product provider to be able to provide you with that content, with that data, with that information. So that for example, I've got a client that has a significant spend on the EAP due to a large number of employees, around 20,000 employees, but they know in every year when I present to them that for every 1 rand they spend, in this case, in this example, they're getting 1 rand 94 back in return in terms of risk-rated return on investment due to absenteeism savings. Because if you deal with the presenting issues before they become severe, then you alleviate that unnecessary absenteeism, and that needs to be reported and recorded. Unfortunately, through the pandemic, as I've referenced, what we're seeing is a spike in the level of severity of the cases that are coming through. So this is unfortunately leading to a lot of our counselors' time. So we've got 1.2 million potential members on our program. We've got close to 1,000 counselors in our network across South Africa doing telephonic, virtual, face-to-face counseling. And what we are finding, unfortunately, this is kind of the hard edge of this psychosocial pandemic, we are finding we're dealing with more severe traumas, we're dealing with more suicide ideations than we've ever had to deal with previously. So there is real catastrophic fallout as the result of the pandemic. So we're just not just talking about aspirational nice to have, we're talking about real cutting edge support structures that are needing to be in place. It has, however, thankfully put the spotlight, as I mentioned, on psychosocial issues and the need to address these. So that's, it's a double-edged sword, but that's the positive. In terms of the presenting problem areas, we haven't seen a significant difference pre-COVID to post-COVID in terms of what the main presenting problems are. They are still number 1 and number 2, stress, and I think we could see that in the poll. Of course, there are many contributors to stress, but they, of all of the caseload that we see coming through, stress is always the major contributor to the presenting problem and what has driven the person to engaging in the service. And second to stress is relationship issues. Of course, those are always intertwined in themselves. What we have seen, though, since the start of the pandemic that is significantly different is that when the person is speaking to us around stress or relationship issues, since the start of the pandemic, in 53% of instances, it's due to financial stress. So financial stress and financial burdens have had a significant impact on driving people into the program due to the stresses that they're experiencing and the relationship problems that they're experiencing as a result of the financial stress. I think I saw in the press yesterday, we've had about 4.3 million job losses through the pandemic. And so we can understand the vast impact on financial stress, people in debt crisis, people in unregulated type lending situations where they're lending from loan sharks just to get by. This, we even seen certain client instances is even driving up absenteeism on payday because they're loan sharks waiting in the car park, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not only the issues around working from home, there are also just some severe issues around just life and trying to get by from a financial perspective. And hence we'll speak to the service offering. It can't only be counseling support. A really good lifestyle program has to help the individual address their financial needs and financial concerns, as well as the legal. So if I'm in an abusive relationship, as an example, I can't just be counseled through my abusive relationship. I have to be given the legal recourse to get protection orders, or if I'm needing maintenance, to go to the small claims court, and et cetera, et cetera. So there are many parameters that that one needs to look at in terms of providing really good lifestyle support outside of just the counseling element of an EAP or a lifestyle program. What has happened since COVID-19 is that this counseling support has really become really intensive. So it's on all EAP programs or on all lifestyle programs, it's not counseling for counseling's sake. It's always a solutions-focused counseling methodology. And our average used to be around 4 to 6 counseling sessions. So I guess you could land on an average of 5 there. So after 5 sessions, on average, we would know that the person's presenting problem, they'd been counseled through that problem, and we would open another case for them happily after that, because very often if it's a financial case, then there's relationship issues and they're dealing with different caseloads. But on average, the person would feel that they were on a path where they could, handle their presenting problem within their own life structure. That is no longer the case in the post-COVID, in the pandemic period. We're now seeing the average solutions-focused counseling sessions to be between 8 and 10. So we're landing on an average of about 9. So we've more than doubled in terms of the amount of counseling sessions it's taking. And this will, this speaks to the severity of the cases. So an increase in the severity of cases is meaning, of the highly severe cases is meaning that those counseling sessions, the counseling sessions that are required are more. So you can understand the impact on our counselors. I believe they're the angels in our business, and we take really, really good care of them because, the intensity of their work has doubled, as well as the frequency. And the frequency of the sessions as well as the length of the sessions. So prior to the pandemic, the average length of a counseling session, if you went across the board of telephonic counseling, virtual counseling, of course, we springboarded into virtual counseling as we are in springboard into virtual presentations. But we still, there is still the need for face-to-face counseling, and we're still, operating in that way. A good lifestyle program will always offer face-to-face counseling. The length of the sessions has also increased. So there's this double whammy. We're between 8 and 10 sessions, but the length of our sessions on average across the platforms has increased from around 35 minutes per session to 55 minutes per session. So that is the intensity of the type of counseling needs we're dealing with. But what that says to us is that would speak to, at that intensity, really speak to driving abnormal absenteeism in the business. And that also compounded by the fact that we're not seeing absenteeism necessarily, because with people working from home, you could just have somebody logged off for the day. And so you're getting more kind of a presenteeism scenario. And as managers, it's making it very, very hard to be able to really tap into and tune into how people are, what they're dealing with, and whether they're being productive and present at work. So I thought I would just take you through. I would understand that those of you participating in the webinar today are managers yourselves. So because what people say to me, okay, so you understand this, we have lots of leaders, managers, executives engaging with the service as well. So it goes, full cross section of the organization. So what is very often asked of us we also, I would say, a comprehensive lifestyle program also has to proactively offer leadership counseling, management counseling, family coaching, management coaching, parental coaching is one of the services we offer, especially now in the times of COVID, because we have seen a lot more of reaching out to us by parents, as we've seen the impact of COVID-19 of children due to homeschooling, sports being cancelled. There's been a dramatic psychosocial impact on the children of South Africa, and parents not knowing how to support them and how to help them through their kind of emotional withdrawals or acting out or whatever the presenting issues are within children. I think just to reference here, it's also very important that if you have an EAP program, as I referenced, it gets extended to family members, that should include children. Children in today's time need play therapy, need counseling to deal with an uncertain world, and a world in which their parents can't always give them the answers and the safety net and the support that they're needing. So we're seeing a lot of parents reaching out to us. How can I support my children through this? And in fact, we're seeing a lot of direct engagement from teenagers and children coming into the program, and where we're able to give them the right kind of therapies or advice or support. And this is important because, unfortunately, as part of those suicide ideations, what we've seen is a significant spike in teenage suicides in South Africa. We've got one of the highest teenage suicide rates in the world. So, we're glad to be seeing that engagement and to be seeing people getting support for their teenagers. But in terms of your role, what we're hearing is parents are reaching out to us. So, I call them corporate athletes. Here we are, we're working, and we're parents, we're managers, we're parents, we're colleagues, we're executives, we're mentors, we're daughters, we're cousins, we're sisters, and we take on all of these life roles, and we're having to be strong and resilient for people around us, and we don't always have the right support structures in place. And people will say, as a psychosocial program, as a lifestyle program, what kind of suggestions do you make to us in terms of when we're doing this leadership coaching? And all I can really say around that, so that hopefully you've got something to take away for yourself from today, and not just how a program can support an organization, is really take responsibility for your health and well-being. Really hone in on it and focus on you, because what you will find, if you're anything like me, if your world is anything like mine, you can get spread really thinly across all of these life roles and find that you're trying to be strong and resilient for everybody else, but forgetting that they need you to be strong and resilient. And therefore, by prioritizing yourself, you stay healthy and well to be able to support them. So take responsibility for that. While Cyril is letting us exercise and be outdoors and, do all the things we weren't able to do for a period of time in level 5. I say to many of our members, take those walks, have the family time. We don't all need to be, participating in half marathons and Ironman and all this crazy kind of stuff, but really take the time now that spring is coming, now that the sun is shining, to go and do that family walk in the evening. And one of the positives of this more flexible working environment, it's a double-edged sword though, it's a positive and a negative, is we can take an hour off and we're at home and we can go focus on something that builds resilience and strength and is restful and restorative for us and energizing for us. But be aware of the other edge of that sword, which as the corporate executive means, or the corporate athlete means, at 9 o'clock at night, we're flicking the laptop back up, right, to make up for the hour that we stood. And then and that 1 hour suddenly becomes 3 hours and we realize it's midnight and we're still in work mode. But you have to have life balance. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what life balance is in my view. I don't believe it's about a balance of time across working, sleeping, personal time. I don't think you can do that 8 hour. It just doesn't work, especially not in this environment. But I'll talk you through a little bit what that is. And just to recognize that the first and foremost fundamental emotional need for the human being, if you understand the neocortex and the human brain and you understand our hormones, is for that of certainty. And in this time of great uncertainty, one can only understand why there is this psychosocial downward spiral. Really, the only way to overcome that is to continue to talk to one another, to communicate like never before. Stay close to your team members. Do a daily Teams meet if you need to. And just with cameras on, we've suddenly all gone to the off camera and complete separation from one another because we've got way too comfortable in our sweats. But really try, and as much as you can, and especially now that people are getting vaccinated, slowly coming back together again, let's try and have that human connection and talk and support one another through this time of great uncertainty, which will continue. And this is where in our business, we're speaking a lot to the Stockdale paradox. It's in the Jim Collins book, Good to Great. And James Stockdale was he was in the Vietnam War, and he's got this great defining philosophy of something I certainly resonate to, and it's my own kind of indulgence here, but which is around, so he was in a prisoner of war camp for 7 years during the Vietnam War and survived that 7-year cycles. And he said, the guys that didn't make it through the 7 years, not to say that hopefully not we're going through 7 years of pandemic, but the guys who were in the trenches and in the POW camps for those 7 years, the ones that didn't make it through, he says, were your ultimate optimists. They weren't your realists. They were the ones who said, by Christmas we'll be out, and then they weren't out of the camp. Okay, no, by New Year we'll be out. And I don't know if you're starting to recognize some of the nomenclature now. By New Year we'll definitely be out of the POW camp. By Easter we'll definitely be done. And year came and year on came and year on came. And the ones that then reached next Christmas and still weren't out the camp, in essence, he said they died of a broken heart. They just couldn't mentally survive the torture of not getting through, not being able to see their optimistic thoughts revealed. So what James Stockdale says, as in his philosophy, is we have to hope for the best and know that in the end we will prevail. Of course, as you know, I would like to believe I have an optimistic outlook, I have a positive outlook. So I do like to align to the sense that this belief that in the end we will prevail, but face the harsh reality of our current existence. So recognize that there will be another lockdown. We will have another wave. This is not, as optimistic as we are, as we're going into spring and we're starting to get this essence of hopefully clawing back some version of normality as children are back at school and starting to compete in sport and people are starting to come back into the office. There will be another wave. There will be another variant. People aren't getting vaccinated at the rate that we hope they would be. And so we can anticipate another lockdown. I think if we can just face the harsh reality of our current truth, but believe that in the end we will prevail, then I think that's a better way of framing things than being just in this blind kind of optimistic view of things. I hope we're still okay for time. I'm really, really close to the end, I assure you. But when I speak about life balance, I just referenced that in the previous slide. I've been working in Excel, sorry. We have all these life roles. So these are the kind of the 7 main life areas. And within each one of those life areas, there are all these roles that we perform, especially as executives, as supporting a family. We have to recognize that we're supporting this cause of a family. And so we are parents, we are siblings, we are daughters or sons in the work life, we are colleagues, we are mentors, we are managers, we're executives, we are clients, we are suppliers, we are all of these different things. And each one of those roles requiring our time. My sense is you are in balance if you are spending your time in the way you want to be spending your time. The minute you feel forced into spending your time in a way that's not aligned to your strongest values, that's when you start to feel an imbalance. So if I reframe it, if I can just give you the example and indulge me for a moment, if I can frame it in my current circumstances, I don't think I felt more balanced through the pandemic in terms of being able to spend my time with my children for an hour in the afternoon while I take a quick work break and go and take them for a walk with the dogs, thereby spending time on a bit of health, a bit of family, taking a mental break, and then getting back into the work context a little bit later. I'm spending my time in the way I want to be spending my time, according to and aligned to my highest values, but still being productive and still meeting the objectives of what it is I want and need to do according to what's important to me. And I think that's more important for balance and resilience than this defined. I think there was a methodology that spoke to the 3 8s, which was your day should be defined by an 8 hours of work, 8 hours of personal time, 8 hours of sleep. The reality is life just simply doesn't work that way. We're too connected and we have too many roles across all of these life areas. So just to finish off, what should a good lifestyle program or an EAP program in your organization look like? Of course, I'm very subjective and biased towards what I believe that should be. But if you are looking into a program, may I suggest that these 6 areas are definitely met. Counseling is sincere. And what I mean by sincere is that the person can engage in immediate telephonic, virtual, or face-to-face counseling, and it's available to them 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. That's very important because you don't choose the time in which you feel that you're most distressed within your life. As part of that counseling service, you also need to offer a deep financial advice program. It's everything from debt management to purchasing decisions to understanding interest and balloon payments and purchasing of vehicles and getting ourselves into difficult financial, tricky situations. The legal advice, which is everything from, as I referenced, protection orders, small claims courts, divorce settlements. It's very important that we can support your employees through that program, through those needs as well. And then, of course, trauma response. So we've seen in terms of those heightened severe cases, a heightened levels of trauma, and being able to respond, certainly if it happens in the workplace, to be able to respond on site and do a critical incident stress debriefing for anyone who may have experienced a terrible trauma at the workplace. I've spoke through the importance of always extending the benefit to family members. So organizations pay for their employee, but through paying a fee per employee per month, they're actually extending the services out into a community, out into the family members of that employee. And the therapies that need to be available here must be specific to children and teenagers. And when I say children, definitely children under 16 who have presenting problems that parents are raising with us. And of course, proactive engagement. So all the leadership support I'm speaking of in terms of leadership coaching, parent coaching, managerial coaching, and all of those support channels that should be wrapped into the EAP or the lifestyle program, and not as fee-for-service standalones. They should really be all in the service in terms of what you pay per employee per month should really be all encompassing. I think in terms of what it is that I wanted to present to just give you an overview. That's it from me. Very happy to open the floor up to any discussions or questions. Thanks, Zanele.
Thank you so much, Nadine.
Welcome.
I just want you to expand on a few things that you mentioned. Sometimes it's difficult for employees to identify the need for an EAP. So besides absenteeism and presenteeism that we've mentioned, what are the other important factors that they need to watch out for in order to identify if there is a need to introduce an EAP program?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and there are many kind of indicators. The ones we hear of the most is if the organization has an HR department or a people department. Very often they'll have employees leaning on them and coming to them in terms of needing support, it can be anything from financial to support to counseling support, or just to offload and share their experiences. And then what happens in that scenario? So we've seen it within HR functions, or HR business partner type roles, that people start to lean on them, and there's an expectation for the people functions of organizations to deal with the issues and the presenting problems that people are facing. Or if the organization is running any kind of service like an on-site clinic where people are dealing with the physical presenting problems, then very often if there's a nursing sister or something like that on site, then they become what I often refer to as the agony aunts of the business. The danger of this is that most often people working in a people function or working in a clinic on site, they're not qualified counselors. And so they're not able to help and support people with those presenting problems. So if you're getting lots of requests and people, wanting to engage and asking for help and asking for support, then, a huge red flag that you could certainly as an organization benefit from having a support service, whether that be from a counseling perspective, or I'm needing some bridging finance, or I'm just not making ends meet, or can the company give me a loan? These are all indicators of where a lifestyle program can support. So that is certainly one area. I think another area to address is if you want to be an employer of choice. So if you want to be an employer that is recognized as putting your people first. So we say one of our values as Kaelo is we want to work with people who believe in putting their people first. So we don't believe in offering any kind of program that's a tick box exercise to say I want to put in an EAP. You really must want to make a difference to the lives of your employees and help your employees see that you put them first. So they are important enough to you that you're prepared to sponsor or pay for or invest in a program that is there to support them when they're at their most vulnerable.
Perfect. One of the questions asked by the audience is that they currently have a Discovery Healthy Company program.
Yeah.
How is your program different from what Discovery offers them? So what is the value proposition that you guys have?
Yes, it's a difficult question because I'm not into Discovery Healthy Company as a competitor of mine, and I'm not really into putting competitors down. And so I would leave it to Sasfin to do the analysis on the two different programs and present that to the client in terms of what are the pros and what are the cons. In certain contexts, Discovery Healthy Company would be the right service offering, and in other contexts it would be a Kaelo lifestyle program. It would just be dependent on what the organization's needs are. My understanding of Discovery Healthy Company as an example, it's a very digitized solution, which would be good for an environment where people have access to data, are all working on digital platforms, because it can still offer the services digitally. I'm not sure if this is true, I must just say, but from what I understand, if you want a highly indigenized solution and something that has got more of a face-to-face element of it, where there's a bigger network of face-to-face counselors, not only through a digital platform, then perhaps a program like Kaelo Lifestyle may be more suitable for that example. But to put it into the context, that's something where SASFIN would be able to do an analysis in terms of what the organization's needs are and which EAP lifestyle program would best support that environment.
Then the second question is around the pricing. So whilst we understand that companies shouldn't try and use a one-size-fits-all approach, and that the EAP program offering should be tailored to meet both the needs of employees as well as the company's budget, what is your advice in terms of what should not be negotiated in terms of the components that are needed to ensure a successful EAP program? And I know that you mentioned 6 important factors that they should always be taken into consideration. But in terms of costing, how would the company identify the most important ones?
Yes, so that is a great question. I think that's the essence of the main point I wanted to make today, is that it is the integration of all those service offerings that builds a comprehensive lifestyle program. Because if you had to extract any one of those service offerings, you're not going to be supportive on a big chunk of presenting issues or presenting problems that we see in terms of the base that we support and that we service. On the issue of pricing, though, what I would say, and I think I did reference it in it, is be sure that when you enter into the price negotiation, that everything is included in that fee. And you know very specifically what is included as part of the investment per employee per month and what is not included. Because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where suddenly, for example, I know there are EAP providers out there where if you need any kind of on-site trauma response, you have to, that's a fee for service and you have to get a quote for that. But you're dealing with an on-site trauma situation, you actually just want to get the trauma counselor there within the service level agreement so that they can deal with the stress debriefing in the service level turnaround times. You can't be kind of trying to find quotes from different providers and invoices. I'll give you an example on this. We're not the EAP provider to Curo Schools. I just want to put it to you there. They have another EAP provider, but a very diluted, very, very cost effective, but very diluted EAP service offering. It's about in the crux and the core of the moment where there's a catastrophic event, you want to know that the program responds and that there's no dilution in any way. So what happened at Curo, in the car park, a parent knocked over some children, and I got the call from Curo to say, we need a counselor on site now. You're not our EAP provider, but the current EAP provision doesn't provide on-site trauma support. And in fact, I got the call through the intermediary, the equivalent of SASFIN, to say, please, can you help and please, can you support? This is a catastrophe. Children have been severely injured. 2 are critical. There's a parent, that has been arrested, and we need everybody saw it. It was in front of children, and we need support and we need help. The program has to respond in that moment. And so it's very hard to cut anything out of a program. Just be sure you know what the price includes and what you need in terms of your program and how it should respond. Because of our business values, which is around sincere engagement and doing right by South African citizens, I sent a counselor out immediately because that's the right thing to do, even though they weren't a client. We don't normally do that, but in this case, a program like this just has to be able to respond appropriately at those really core moments. What I will say around pricing is what I think we do quite differently at Kaelo, is that we do offer clients utilization-based pricing, because the return that you get is only as good as the utilization that you're receiving, and it's up to us to partner with you. We give each of our clients a dedicated client relationship manager, and that person's role is to run marketing campaigns, align to your wellness calendars, drive emotional wellness days, and do things to really drive the utilization of the program. So what we can do, and again, you know, SASFIN would consult with you, is we can offer you utilization-based pricing. So we can say for the first year, because you've never had an EAP program, or because, you know, you're not having good utilization on your current EAP program, let us come and partner with you and drive up that utilization. So in the first year, you're going to only pay for a 0 to 6% utilization of the program. We're going to expect to drive that up in year 2, and then we may need to reassess, and hopefully we're getting 20 to 25% utilization. And then we may have to renegotiate around what your utilization levels are, but you want the utilization to be high, and you want to be paying a higher utilization-based premium, because that means you're yielding more in terms of the risk-weighted returns. You're getting, you know, a reduction in absenteeism, better productivity, more engaged employees, and becoming an employer of choice. So that is something we can look at, but you talk around that if you want to engage with us and you want to look at a quote and you want to look at how those pricing structures work. Or if you want to compare us against a current provider, we can come in with a fixed rate and we can look at what that is and put that in an average utilization base. I will tell you though, if you compare us in the market, something we stay really, really close to, if you want to look at the success of your EAP program, the average EAP program runs at about a 12% utilization. That means for every 100 employees, 12 employees will engage with the service annually. We hold ourselves to, on average, a 25% utilization. So we are determined to double the industry standard, so that every single one of our clients, on average, should be experiencing a 25% utilization. If you're below that, you're not getting the utilization you should be getting out of your EAP program. We have clients where utilization is as high as 45 to 50%. So of 100 employees, 50 employees are using the service. Those clients are the ones who partner with us, the ones who are prepared to run the manager orientation sessions and allow us to engage with the leadership, because when leadership become the raving fans of the EAP program, they start to recommend it and do referrals into the program as a leadership tool and as a support tool. And that's where you really start to see EAPs firing.
That's wonderful. Earlier, you mentioned that some of the trends that you've picked up during the lockdown were stress-related, relationship issues, financial issues, even suicidal thoughts. Can you just explain the journey that Kaelo would walk with this particular individual that has called into your call center?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not qualified to speak through the clinical protocols, but in essence, it's a solutions-focused counseling protocol. It means that the person would call into the contact center. The reason it has to start with a call into the contact center or engagement into Ask Nelson. So in our environment, it's 0861 Nelson. You can go through the app. You can call in. You can send a please call me. You can send a USSD. We make it you know, as user-friendly as possible for people to engage with the service. If you stopped for a DUI or driving under the influence at 3 in the morning and you need legal advice and legal support, all you have to remember is 0861 Nelson, and you know, if you can get into the services, and you kick into the service. What happens is that case comes in. It's a counselor that answers the telephone. It always has to be a counselor. So it's not a call center agent to a referral, because if it's a suicide ideation, you know, so unfortunately it's not suicidal thoughts, you know, the hard edge of this that's coming in, it's proper suicide ideation. So it's needing to save the person's life in that moment to prevent them from taking, you know, the pills or jumping off the building or whatever it is. So the counselor has to answer the telephone. What happens in that instance is that the counselor then plots this person's presenting issue on what is called the work impact scale. It goes from a rating system of white through to red. And depending on where they're sitting on that work impact scale, which is saying what is the severity of this person's presenting issue, and then the counseling program or the case methodology will then be determined as a result of the person's severity of the issue that's presenting. Either they're asking to be patched through to the financial services support team, or they're being asked to patch through to the legal services support team, but it is always a counselor who answers the telephone. That counselor will then become the person's case manager. either that counsellor, or the person may say to her, I'm an isiXhosa woman in the Western Cape, and I would prefer to speak to an isiXhosa counsellor. All our counsellors are representative across all of the demographic, all of the languages of South Africans. You know, I've been raped. I don't want to feel to speak to a male counsellor. I need to speak to an isiXhosa female counsellor. That will then be triaged, and then that counsellor becomes the person's case manager through the entire process. Should that counsellor either determine or the person request that they would prefer to engage in a face-to-face type counseling scenario, so they would like to go see somebody, that counselor remains the person's case manager, but then refers the person into a counselor in their area with their language choice, gender choice, etc., and you start to engage in the counseling process. If the person doesn't want to do the virtual counseling or the telephonic counseling, or their case is severe enough that we recognize they need to be supported. If it's divorce counseling, it's very hard to counsel a couple together virtually or over the telephone. If it's child therapies, they may need to be referred to the particular child therapists in the area. But the network is vast, and the cross-section of counselors is vast. Ask me, it's been my background my whole life. The chemistry that one needs to have with one's counselor is incredibly important in terms of being able to support this person through their case. They then get counseled, and then they get plotted on the work impact scale in terms of how they left the program. So there's a final analysis in terms of the problem that you came into the service, how it was presenting, how is it now presenting, and where would we plot you on that work impact scale now. And really, if you had to look at our data, you will see people come into the as I was saying, the severe cases have increased, so people come in the red, and in 97% of cases they leave in the white, thereby saving organizations.
That's brilliant. I've got just one more question for you. What reporting is shared with the employer so that they can ascertain whether additional support needs to be provided, and or if the company could make certain changes to policy, EAP offering, remote working environments, reduce or address the pressure faced by their employees?
Yeah, so the reporting and I would be happy to share, anyone on the webinar, I'd be very happy to share examples of our reporting. So there's a monthly dashboard. Obviously, we can't get into the specifics. Confidentiality is key. We can never breach confidentiality. We would lose our licenses. Our counselors would lose their licenses. They make an oath to the Health Professions Council of South Africa. So the only instances, so just on a quick side note, the only instances in which we would breach confidentiality is, there's 4 instances. Is if the person's suicidal, then we have to breach confidentiality to get to their colleagues, get to their family members, dispatch emergency services in an ideation, so we can get to them as quickly as we can to save their lives. In the case of a child reporting abuse, we have to report that to the Child Protection Services, or in the event that employee is threatening damage to other people or damage to company property, we have to notify the authority. So those are the 4 instances against the oath within which we're allowed to breach confidentiality. So we'll never get into the specifics of a case. Unless a manager has done a formal referral on a particular case. So a manager has had a performance meeting with somebody and recognized they are presenting issues as one of the tools they have at their disposal. Before you get into any kind of informal or formal disciplinary, they can do an informal referral into the counseling service. They then, as the manager, do get feedback, not on the presenting issues on the case, but on the engagement of the case. So the manager will be told, you asked us to contact this employee, we have contacted them, they are agreeing to engage in the counseling service or the financial support program or the legal program. Or we did contact them, they're not taking our calls, they're not willing to engage in the service, and then the manager knows whether they can move it to a more formal disciplinary process. So often this is used as a precursor to formal disciplinary. But in terms of the reporting that you see, you will certainly see at a high level by organization, and you can even go down to by department or by geography. We can go 2 levels down. What are the types of trends we're seeing in the organization? And that'll always be divided around counseling cases, financial cases, legal cases. So if we had to split, and then you'll see a split of counseling. Is it stress? Is it relationship issues? Is it abuse? what are the types of trends we're seeing within your organization particularly, and how does it compare against the norm of your industry? So you get to see those, and you see this on a monthly dashboard. And then we would divide financial around, is it purchasing decisions, debt management, what are the different wills and estate planning, what are the different financial services that the employees are engaging with, and legal across criminal, civil, the different types of legal services, what are the types of legal services that people are engaging with, how many people are engaging, how many initial cases, how many follow-up cases. So we always show you between ongoing utilization and new utilization, ongoing cases, new cases. You get that split on a monthly basis, and then across the different categories, but from a group level, not from an individual level. But from that, you can see what are the issues. Is it relationship? Is it financial? Is it parenting? Anxiety? Is it actual disorders? What are we dealing with in the organization, and how can we address those proactively through support programs, which we can partner with you to help you and support you?
Wonderful. I haven't seen any other questions from the audience.
I see there's one here around, is there any duplication of EAP with medical scheme benefits? No. So a medical scheme doesn't, outside of medical savings account, outside of your MSA, a medical scheme doesn't cover as part of the core benefit any type of counseling needs. So unless you've got a medical scheme, medical savings account, which in essence is the money that you've saved for your own day-to-day benefit, there isn't any type of counseling service. And unfortunately, if you're relying on the state, I think there's something like 50,000 patients to one counselor in the States. So you'll be waiting about 20 years to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist within the state infrastructure without any type of proper form referral into those services. So yeah, an EAP program in terms of the infrastructure that government supports or that the health insurers support, one has to look at something specific, or a specific program in the organization. We do, at Kaelo, we offer health insurance products that kind of having a little cross-sell opportunity here, but in certain health insurance products, which is like a low-cost, well, it's not a medical aid, but it's a low-cost private health insurance for people who can't afford medical aid. Certainly in the Kaelo products, we include Kaelo Lifestyle as part of that, because we just see when we embed a psychosocial program, we see the cost of GPs just come down dramatically, because what often happens in an insured world, because people don't get counselors as part of their health insurance offering, they go to their GP. For medication when they're feeling stressed or anxious. They go to deal with the symptom and not necessarily deal with the cause. So when you wrap in a lifestyle program into an insurance offering, you do see the decrease in GP costs as a basis of people dealing with the psychosocial issue, as opposed to wanting to be treated for the symptoms of stress or anxiety. We do also offer a digital version only of our lifestyle program for all our gap cover policy holders. So if you're looking at an organizational gap cover and you are wanting to roll this out within your organization and as an agreed premium for your organization, if you were to look at Kaelo as a solution, we would include Kaelo Lifestyle Digital for all policyholders. But then there isn't necessarily the same partnering and proactive engagement on that, because it's something that's included as a value-added service for a policy member, for a policy holder, as opposed to really a program that is really deeply driven and integrated into the organization's value system.
Wonderful. All right, in closing, I hope that everybody enjoyed this session. It was very informative, and I hope it has assisted everybody. It has empowered all the attendees to deal with the challenges that they're facing right now during this pandemic. And I would just like to say to everybody, they are welcome to make contact with their SASFIN healthcare consultant should they require further assistance or any information regarding the session that we had today. And once again, thank you very much for the lovely presentation, Nadine.
Thank you.